Hey everybody. Hey y'all. Hey y'all. Hey, it is Wednesday, July 15th. Y'all, it's Haja Scott with OfLaceandGraceTV. How is everybody doing? Let me check and make sure these connections are right because it's been mayhem. Can anybody agree? It's been mayhem. We're here to talk about mayhem on the streets with produce, but it's just been mayhem in some of our worlds. And so meaning we gotta find ways to navigate and go around some of these challenges that we are finding. So, welcome in and happy Wednesday. I just had a quick little conversation as I feel like we need to talk about this produce thing. We need to talk about this mayhem. And so, I'm trying to make sure this is live. Y'all, Instagram is tripping, but hey, we'll post some clips or a little story or something on Instagram. But for some reason, I can't we can't get that working. And so right now we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. And so check us out there. Let me make this little update real quick. We talking about this mayhem on the street with the produce, y'all. I heard online they were calling it the produce lockdown. And so let's see. Yeah, they were calling it the produce lockdown, all these things. But all I do know is that this is occurring for a reason. Maybe I should say that better. Um, at the time that this is occurring, there's a reason for it. And there's a reason for the things that we are doing right now that are connected to some of the things that we're seeing. And so we're talking about it today, the foodborne illness. Well, they're calling it the foodborne illness. We don't know for sure, but this is cyclopsoriasis. And so that's the foodborne illness. But of course, the parasite is cyclospora that is causing this. And so we do a lot of talk on here. We're in a series which we've been in pretty much all year long: health, wellness, and the essentials. We started online. We've gone to some in-person meetings, some in-person gatherings called Sage Saturdays on Auburn. So whoever has been able to come out and see us in Atlanta, GA, I'm so glad that you were able to come. We were able to meet. We were able to talk. We were able to hang out and have some fun as we're learning on Saturdays. And for those that have been able, we haven't been really live streaming, but I think we're going to live stream this next Saturday that's coming up, which is actually this Saturday, the 18th. But what we've been talking about is health, wellness, and the essentials for life in this time of life. And so we have a crisis amongst us. There's been a lot of crises amongst us that we've been seeing back to back to back. But here's one that's actually dealing with some of the area that we've been speaking to and we've been trying to educate in that's food. Some of the things that we've been building is the food systems and networks for the food systems, regional networks, local, thank you, Father, local networks for food systems, because of certain things that we're seeing right now. So as we all have seen on the news, and if you haven't seen, go ahead and catch up. This parasite or that's causing the foodborne illness has been affected. It's an outbreak, and it's been affecting, they say, in the thousands, of course, in the Michigan and Ohio regions. But there's 31 states as of right now that have cases that have been found. So it is continuing to spread. It's a diarrhea and some other things that comes from this parasite that's basically ingested. But the origin that they're saying comes from human feces. So be it on the food, during preparation of the food, distribution of food, and also through our water supplies, y'all. So here's a fact that before I even kind of get into some of this, because you can find this information on the news, it's all over. We're not here to report information that we've already seen on the news and see which produce are more susceptible to it, because they don't even know, and they're saying certain herbs, they're saying lettuces and, and our leafy greens. if it is something, if truly looking at the origin and the source of this, it cannot be contained to just these types of produce, because if it's in the water, if it's in the handling, unless it was, again, specific things handled at a factory, specific factories, or in the distribution methods, maybe there wasn't any cross contamination, and it was just these that were on this conveyor belt or in this section, or these workers that were dealing with it. Yeah, it could be. But 9 times out of 10, it's probably a little bit more widespread than we know at this time as far as produce. And so this is a big thing, because produce, as we talk about fruit, vegetables, this is a huge part of our diet and our consumption, what we're trying to increase our consumption of for to help us navigate and deal with and combat some of these illnesses and body ailments that we find ourselves in, because these fruits and vegetables have natural components that lend themselves to healing the body naturally. So this is a crisis. Here's a fun fact about this real quick, and I want to say, wait, let me say this. This is a crisis because a lot of us think, okay, we're prepared for this. We get our stuff locally and we don't get things sourced from all over. Okay, so this week, it was a crisis for me. For the mere fact, not for everything, but even just, okay, I want to go out and I want to pick this up and I need to get something to eat for lunch real quick. And then now my choices are limited. We don't realize how many cuisines are made with these herbs, that are made with vegetables, that are made with some of the things that right now are threatened with contamination. So fun fact, did you know that normal fertilization methods in some large scale farms and companies, government run operations, and those that are influenced by, again, mostly because of the fact that they can produce these large batches for large amounts of consumption. This fertilization through human feces is not abnormal. They use that. Now, those that do organic gardening, whatever, we know that that the animal, that the remains, animal poop, if you will, like that's part of fertilization, but not human. Now, that's not what we do. There's differences in that, but again, because we look at trying to expand production in this large scale way, and a lot of this is, government influence. Looking at things from top down rather than also examining things for the needs for humanity, not just producing food and food production, but the moral choices for human consumption and life preservation and things like that. So did you know that they do that human feces actually is a normal part of, not every, but a lot of large farm, large company fertilization methods. So cases like this, and we know that there will be more to come. This is why we've been preparing in the way that we've been preparing for the last couple of years, for the last couple of months even. Some of us just jumped on the bandwagon the last couple of weeks. This is why we've been learning to grow our own food. This is why we've been impressing upon those to grow our own food. This is why we've been taking time to teach. And while we're doing, rolling cameras, getting footage, giving you information on how to grow your own food. Yeah, we think about for sustainability, with food supply, when things are low and things like that. But a lot of this is, we've been talking about for a minute, what they are doing in the food systems. What processes are being allowed as part of the food systems? What chemicals for preservation to hold things for longer? Again, so for more consumption. So it's about the bottom line as well. What things are being injected and introduced in the growing system, in the growing time, for our produce in the food systems. And now we're talking about contamination in the food systems. And so this is why, because when these interruptions come, there are certain things that we don't have to deal with when we are actually growing our own or sourcing locally our own food sources. It's not completely eliminated, but it is lessened greatly. And there's less, again, disruptions to the food supply, but then our families are safe. There are certain things we're not scrambling and have to think about. Or again, somebody is down with this illness for 2 weeks or so. They say it can go anywhere from 2 weeks to a month or so. And a lot of times they don't know that it's actually that until you're about 2 weeks in. So building our networks. This is the other reason why we've been preparing, not just growing our own food, sustainability and everything, and everything along those lines, but building our networks. We talked about our regional networks. We talked about our local networks. Why it was important to connect and not just say, I go to Kroger. I'm sorry to call places out, but I go to this store. I go to that store. I get what I need. What we've been able to do in the past, we may not be able to do fully, or we may not want to do. We may not want to do this now and even in the future because of some of these challenges. And so when you build your networks, that means locally, you're looking for those who grow locally. Everybody doesn't have to be a grower. Everybody's like, I don't have this skill set, and it's great. It's fine. Well, it's not great, but it's fine. We can work around that if you've identified local sources. Where do you get your meat? Where are you getting your fish? Where do you get your eggs? Where do you get your cheeses, your dairy? Where do you get your produce, your breads, your grains? Y'all, people grow this. We do know this, right? So if there are large farms that grow this and send it to grocery stores and we're able to purchase it there, don't you think they could do the same thing at smaller farms, smaller businesses? It's just on a smaller level. They may not have 30 different breads for you to choose from, but they might have 4. They may not have 35 different cheeses, but they got 5 or 6. They may not have every fruit and vegetable that you want year round, because guess what? Some of these things only really grow or thrive in certain seasons. And so that means there has to be methods for preservation. There has to be methods so that we can use them as later times. But a lot of these methods that are being used, again, involve chemical processes, which are in the food. And now as we eat them, we consume them. They're now in our bodies. They're now disruptors to our systems, the systems to our bodies. We're finding ourselves with autoimmune and all these other issues, because these are system disruptors. They're not natural. But there are preservation methods that are not disruptors, where we're not using chemicals. There's things that you can do and buy and freeze and preserve so that you can use them in later times. You can use them in later months. So building these networks. One of the other things that I do want to mention about this is because this is something that's now widespread. 31 states of the United States, of the 50 United States, 31 states and counting. And so we would call that a widespread contamination. But locally, we haven't heard of a lot of people who source their things locally where that's the case, where they have now contracted this illness. Many times with something that's widespread like this, it really doesn't start widespread. It starts just in one place. It usually starts contained in one place, one company, one farm, one warehouse, one distribution location. And then because of our distribution methods, because they're so widespread and there are conglomerates, there are companies that monopolize the market in certain things, certain goods. And so they take the competition away from some of the smaller businesses, and they're able to produce again on this large scale. They're able to produce for the millions, not just the thousands, for the millions. But then their methodologies aren't always, and their practices aren't always morally the best, because they need to produce at such a large scale. There can be contamination introduced. There can be certain parasites, there can be certain bacteria and things like that introduced. And then, because we're talking about all the time, farm to plate, garden to plate, seed to plate, that's not how it goes in our food systems. In our food systems, it goes from farm, and then it goes to warehouses. It goes for prepping, packaging, and these are different. A lot of times they're not the same warehouse. So you got different locations for the preparation, for the packaging, for the distribution. And then it goes to other places, because then you have your local suppliers for you. So your local grocery stores, or maybe the local hub, the local unit, the local warehouse there. Now that distributes to all these different facilities. And then you come in as a consumer, and you know how many layers that is? That could be 5 to 6 layers easily before you're able to get what was grown in the ground, and you're able to bring into your home for you and your family to consume. All those layers, all those hands touching, it introduces the opportunity for situations like this. And so again, taking that contamination to large grocers, or just multiple grocers, multiple locations, multiple warehouses. And then when we finally touch it, it's going directly into our communities, directly into our families, unaware, until it's too late. Sometimes even the protocols, as we talked about, as I was trying to mention, for sanitation, for cleanliness and oversight, some of that is different when you're dealing with a small company versus a larger company. And as we see, even with some of the things that have changed within our government as far as oversight, some of those layers are removed. Some of those analytical layers, some of those layers where people are going in and saying, okay, hey, we did our checks here. Some of those layers now being removed. Now these are opportunities once again for some of these illnesses, some of this bacteria, some of these parasites, all of that to now slip through the cracks because no one is checking. That layer of surveillance and oversight has been removed. And the care, y'all know I'm a small business owner, been a small business owner for a long time. So the care and that concern that a lot of times small businesses have for their communities, their families, their friends, this is their neighborhoods. This is where they grew up, or this is who they service, who support them. That care and concern is just on another level. It's not the same when you're not touching those people or seeing them at all. There's so many layers, again, away from you. Sometimes just that natural human concern really isn't there. It is about the bottom line in some of these cases. So as a small business owner and advocate, and even developer, I'm always going to be team small business. And so this is also a call, support your local small businesses whenever you can. Try to do that. And so here's the thing, Sage Saturdays. For you guys who have tuned in, this time we will do a live stream, because there are some things that we're going to introduce that we've been waiting. We know that we were going to introduce this soon, but it looks like now is the time. So during our next Sage Saturday, we want you to attend if you can. We want you to tune in if you can. And if not, watch the playback. The point is information going forth, and that we're able to grab it. We're able to, so that we're able to utilize it. We're able to benefit from it. But if you never allow yourself to be available, to never allow yourself to engage, you never allow yourself to receive this type of information, when things happen like this with certain crises, you're not prepared. And so that's our purpose. We want everybody to be prepared at this time. So with Sage Saturdays, we're going to be moving deeper into times of world crisis. Now, this isn't going to be all heavy and like, oh, we're in here, brainstorming, we in, in the underground bunker and things like that, which, that stuff's not very far-fetched at all. But we're going to be talking about everyday things. We're going to be talking about practical tips, which we already do with gardening, we already do with nutrition, but we're going to take it a step further so that we can learn and be aware of some of these protection mechanisms and some of these methodologies for sustainability that help us be resilient in times of crisis, like we're seeing now, and even more to come. And so, yeah, we were joking. I started off talking about that because I was talking to a friend about that yesterday, about the produce lockdown. And I was like, I thought I was ready, And even with getting most of my stuff myself, producing and again, using my local growers for the majority of the things I need, that sometimes we're not ready. It's like, I just want to go and get, a taco salad, and again, in some of the cuisine we eat, not calling anything out, but they use, it is good. They use fresh herbs and vegetables. Our African dishes, our Asian and our Mexican Latin dishes. A lot of these use herbs. They use all the stuff we love: our oregano, our basil, our cilantro, our parsley. Not to mention lettuce and tomato on our hamburgers. This is a regular part of life. And so it's easy for this to become a disruption. It's easy for this to become a crisis. It's easy for this for you to unawareingly pick the wrong source. And the next thing you have is you and your family. You find yourself with these foodborne illnesses. Some of these are like, take antibiotics and you'll be fine. There's some others that may not be as simple. There might be those where we have immune compromised systems. And so what would affect somebody else in one way and, put you out for a week or two or even a month, of recovery may be harder on somebody else's body, may lead to it affecting, as one system of the body is overworking to remove whatever foreign object or foreign entity is there. Another system, might be having to work hard because, again, now its attention is going here. Remember, the systems of our body work together. And so there are times where we find one illness leads to another illness for this reason. Because you're over exerting the systems of your body. And they're going into crisis mode. They're going into inflammation mode. And we know, and we'll talk more about inflammation, they're going into inflammation mode. And then they remain there for a certain amount of time and it becomes chronic. And now we've got another issue. Now, this is why we're still on this topic of health, wellness, and the essentials. There's so much more to be released here. So we've got more to talk about, not just with this one area of contamination. We've seen it in other areas. We've seen it with dairy. We've seen it with eggs. We've seen it with cheese. We've seen it with water. And that's another thing that we do need to cover, because sometimes in these processes, again, with this human feces, sometimes it's in the water supply. That's definitely widespread. What do we do when that happens? What do you do when that happens? And so we're here to talk about it. And so join us this Saturday, Sage Saturdays on Auburn. If you are in the ATL area, join us. It's free. Not only are you getting this information, Mama Haleen is going to be there. She is going to be talking about, again, garden. We've got our nutrition facts. We're going to do Q&A. You get to ask your questions. So the things that you want to know, I've been gardening. I've been failing in this. I've had a hard time with this. You've got some experts there that are able to answer some questions that maybe, other people have had. And so you're not the only one. We've got things like that going on. We've got fresh produce from the garden grown locally where we don't have some of these issues with the cyclospora. we don't have some of these issues with the cyclosporiasis and some of the other things that are there. We're just going to be talking about tips on care, tips on growing, tips on harvesting, tips on what do you do when you get your stuff to the house so that you can make sure you are covered and not bringing contamination into your house and introducing it to your families. So join us this Saturday. It is from 11 to 3. That's Eastern time, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I don't know if we're going to be able to live stream the whole thing, but we're definitely going to get the pieces that we feel like you that are needed. Join us so you can find out what's going on. And of course, we'll always post some little clips and things like that and other essential information. So join us this Saturday, July 18th. We'd love to see you there. We'll be at the Front Porch Garden over at 348 Auburn Avenue Northeast. That's in Atlanta, Georgia. And so, y'all, we love talking about the joys of gardening, the strategies, growing your own food, nutrition, but we've got to start to talk about and release practical information and connect us all to resources and help us, empower us to connect to these local resources that will help us sustain our lives, our families, our way of lives in the times to come. And so, yes, we're still talking about health, wellness, and the essentials, but we're also here on Of Lace and Grace TV, still in the season of talking about purpose and purpose partnerships. And this leads right into it. We will continue that because even as we are connecting for these purpose-filled connections, resources and networks, we're building that. This is all for purpose, for the purpose of life that we're living in right now, but also what's needed for your family, for your community, for your neighborhood, for the things that you're called to walk in this lifetime. And so again, tune in. Don't miss this weekend. We are going to go live. I promise we're going to go live on Of Lace and Grace TV. Also, just subscribe and follow so that you can catch some of our playbacks and things like that. Remember, we're always here to give practical information, but also biblical guidance to live our lives with the beauty that God has created and God has created for us to partake in. Okay, so that's really all I had today. I just really want to talk about this mayhem on the streets with this produce, the mayhem that may be going on in some of our lives, and even the signaling the times of things to come. And so you guys, let's continue to prepare. Let's continue to be prepared and continue to prepare. Because once again, we might be prepared in one area and strong in one area and realizing that we're not really prepared in another area where calamity is going to hit. We don't know. I think that's back in Ecclesiastes. We went over it at a time. We don't know from which way calamity may hit. And so that's why we need to be prepared. That's why we need, again, not to go into fear mode, but preparation mode on all sides. And so we're here to help. We're here to guide. We're here to learn together and move through these crises of life together. Okay. I will see you guys again soon. Haja Scott with Of Lace and Grace TV and Next Level Development. And we will talk again really soon. Y'all have a blessed day. Bye.